What's the difference between journalism and activism? When CNN's Brian Stelter tackled that question recently, he sparked a surprisingly sharp debate. But maybe we shouldn't have been surprised because the press has been debating this same question for years. Adam Riley has more.
Right after the March for Our Lives, Brian Stelter welcomed the editor of the Marjory Stoneman Douglas High student newspaper to his show Reliable Sources.
Do you see a difference right now between journalism and activism?
For me, the purpose of journalism is to raise, the voices of people that maybe don't have a voice. And so I think that in its own right, journalism is a form of activism.
To which some non-student journalists said, "Excuse me?" The National Journal's Josh Krashower tweeted, "It's this mentality that's killing trust in our profession." But others saw the issue very differently, including the Washington Post's Wesley Lowery, who argued any good journalist is an activist for truth in favor of transparency on the behalf of accountability. If the back and forth sounds familiar, that's because it is.
Sit down, please.
When Jorge Ramos challenged then-candidate Donald Trump on immigration in 2016, some observers saw a journalist who'd become way too engaged. Ramos countered that sometimes impartiality isn't an option.
The best examples of journalism that we have are when, as a journalist, you challenge those who are in power.
In 2011, after reporter Jose Antonio Vargas came out as an undocumented immigrant in the New York Times Magazine, he rejected NPR's suggestion that he'd somehow changed teams.
You're a former journalist at this point, or do you still consider yourself to be a journalist? Because you're an advocate, and you really, it's sort of hard to be both.
That's a very good question. I am a journalist.
So where does journalism end and activism begin? Whenever this debate flares up, someone suggests that journalism deals in facts while activism seeks results. There's just one problem.
We gotta nail these scumbags. We gotta show people that nobody can get away with this.
Sometimes the best journalism does both.
I was thinking when I was listening to this debate how everything, of course, morphs over time, and traditional people like my father's generation would have pushed back on this 1,000%. But the truth of the matter is, a lot of journalism has morphed into a form of activism, even if it is, seeking the truth. It's still. I look right now at the Me Too movement. I mean, the groundswell of results that have happened as a result of so much reporting about this, and we're just in the beginning of it. But already, less than a year into it, you look at some of the results, and it's a form of activism.
I don't think your father's generation would have pushed back at this. I think that, first of all, we're calling this journalism versus activism. I think you can have them both. You can have a journalistic voice that very much promotes a cause. Crusades have been the heart of journalism for more than 100 years. A newspaper will decide, or a news organization will decide, that we have terribly mistreated these people and we're going to do stories about it. That's good journalism. As long as, I think what separates journalism from advocacy is that generally there is something in the middle that advocacy implies that you have a connection, you have a point of view you're trying to push, you're compromised in some way. Journalism, you need to be uncompromised, but that doesn't mean that you can't be active for some good. I don't see this versus being in the middle at all.
Well, of course, advocacy means different things to different people. John and I both spent a long time working for the Boston Phoenix, and one of the things that we said we practiced was advocacy journalism. And I don't think that we meant compromising our independence in any way, but advocating a certain course of action in the course of doing factual, truthful journalism. That has a place. So does straight news reporting. That has a place. There is an old saying in journalism, we're all about afflicting the comfortable and comforting the afflicted. And what is that if not taking a stand in addition to doing the reporting and telling the truth?
Yeah, now, from the point of view of the comfortable, that's unacceptable activism, right? Okay, so it depends on whose ox is being gored. But I totally agree with what you said. And young Rebecca there, the student newspaper editor, had it exactly right. There's a form of journalism, well established, called opinion journalism. Now, is that an oxymoron? I don't think it is. It's what I do. It's what good columnists do. Then there's flat-out advocacy on outlets that also feature journalism, like the primetime lineups at Fox and MSNBC, where, yay, Trump, boo, Trump. Okay, that's something different. I don't advocate that as the mainstream holy grail of journalism, but the notion that, we're not there for a purpose beyond just transcribing the facts, or as the late Dr. Silber of BU described it, we should be just a clear pane of glass, right? No, that just doesn't fly.
Well, good journalism inspires activism. So that then takes an action. I totally agree with you about opinion journalists. And just to emphasize that a little bit more, because I do that too, you have to make that clear now, because so many people are writing from under their armpit with no facts. Right. So when you can agree on the facts and then have an opinion about them, that well-researched facts are in there, that's journalism, all right? But if you are reporting a story straight and someone, which often happens, is inspired by the results of that story to then act, that doesn't necessarily make you the activist. That makes you the journalist.
What about if you have a dog in the fight, like Mr.
Well,
Vargas?
but that's what Tom just said. If you have a dog in the fight, it's important that you disclose that, and that it be clear then that where you are standing in that. But normally, that should not be what we're about.
That's right. In fact, I think I define advocacy journalism a little differently from Tom, but we agree completely in that you've got to be independent. And once you lose that independence, at the very least you have to disclose. At the most, you've disqualified yourself from...
You can have an opinion as a journalist, but somebody better not be paying you for that opinion.
Well,
right.
But
yes.
they do.
That's right.